Hello and welcome to my channel. And I hope you were all, I don't know why I closed my eyes for so long just then, that was weird, but I hope you're all having a happy Thanksgiving. I wanted to make this video, and I know it's one that probably won't be seen by a lot of people, but that's okay. I wanted to make this video because today is the day that we give thanks. And this year has been such an interesting year in my life with kind of like a lot of emotional highs and lows. The last time I kind of talked about some of the emotional lows of the year was in a video that I made about my pretty privilege video getting 1 million views, and I talked about how I really feel about my journey as a content creator, and those feelings were those feelings. But I wanted to take a moment to also talk about some things, not just with content creation, but just some things in life in general that have unfolded this year that I'm very grateful for. So if you tune into this video and you see it, I'm grateful for you. And let's go ahead and let's get started. Okay, so I'm gonna do five things I am grateful for. I'm gonna start at number 5. I am grateful for my little puppy. When I got him, it was kind of like a surprise that I was expecting. Sebastian is sort of a example that I have in real time of like manifestation. And it's interesting because he's also an example of, you ask for something and it's probably, it may not turn out exactly like you expected. So you have to make a decision about whether or not you want to keep it. But I say that because I had started talking about getting a dog. I have a family dog. And I'd started talking about getting another dog at the top of the year, like at the beginning of 2022. I started researching animals back in January, and I had even sent a picture that looked like this to a friend of mine. So I was pretty dead set on adopting at some point in the year. I didn't know how I was gonna go about it. I didn't know when I was gonna officially go and do what I needed to do. But I was set, like that's something that I wanted to do. The things holding me up, the place where I was living, I wasn't sure how long I was gonna live there. I wasn't sure if I was gonna move, back to Los Angeles from Houston. And so I had some things that were kind of in the air that were holding me back from making a decision, but I was consistently talking about getting a dog. At the same time, I had a friend who was consistently talking about getting a dog as well. And she was always talking about getting a husky. And so I ended up finding, or one day I was out walking my family dog and I went to a dog park and there were 2 puppies there. And this guy said, hey, I found these guys. I'm literally on vacation and I just happened to be like sightseeing in the area. I found these 2 little puppies and I don't know what to do with them. If we surrender them to the shelter, they might euthanize them. If we, I can't keep them because where I'm staying, like obviously like I can't, I'm staying with friends, but they are not allowed to have all these dogs. But there was a lot going on. And so I kind of stepped in because I'd had experience before with surrendering like puppies that I'd found to the ASPCA, and the ASPCA euthanized them immediately. They did have a ringworm, but it's like you could have given me a heads up. But anyway, so I took these dogs and I rehabbed them and, took care of them, and then eventually gave the husky to my friend. And the adventure began with me and this little dog. And while, again, it has not been what I expected because he had a lot of health issues, he's had some behavioral issues. It's been a very precious time. I think when you have an animal, if you've had one, you know that relationship is very special. And it's been nice to see him evolve from like the little puppy that he was when he came to me. He had a lot of issues with food scarcity. He had a lot of issues with aggression. He could not control his wastes. He would just go like whenever. But he learned really quickly. He learned really, really quickly, like where you're actually supposed to use the bathroom. And in general, it's been an adventure. And I have really appreciated the company. Although he's getting a little too comfortable, last night he climbed up in the bed and, I sleep by myself and there's a space on one of the sides because I don't spread across the bed like a starfish. I kind of like my side. And he climbed up and put himself on the other side. And I was like, oh no, you on the ground. So I don't sleep with the dog in the bed. But in general, it's been a very precious experience. And I have enjoyed being his nurturer and being his caretaker and doing little things like going on road trips. And when we can go check out a park because he's reactive, going to check out a little park. And so I enjoy my little pet and I am grateful for him. Okay, the next thing I'm grateful for is where I live. Now, I have not completely finished decorating, even though I've been here like 6 months officially, but I've not completely finished decorating the space, like my bedroom. is still very much a work in progress. I've got some furniture I still need to order. I still don't really have it set up like where I want to shoot. So like I'm sitting on this couch in my living room. You can see my kitchen, you know. But in general, this is the first place that I've ever lived in where I've wanted to invite people over. I've only done it once, but I did it. You know, I've never been in a situation in my life where I have set out like hors d'oeuvres and snacks and provided drinks and like been a host. I've never been a host until I moved into this apartment. When I walk outside in my neighborhood, you know, where I'm at, there's so many trees, and I'm a big outdoors person. I don't always like being outdoors, and I'm very bad in general at like outdoor activities. Well, I'm good at swimming, but when I step outdoors and I see like all of the beautiful trees and like there's like this area of town isn't flat. And most of Houston's like very flat, but this area isn't. When I see that, I get just really happy, and I feel like this is where I've always wanted to be, like the type of area I've always wanted to be in. And, you know, a couple years ago, I was literally moving every year to try and keep up with the rent and to try and keep up with like, you know, just what part of town, what part of LA might work for me. And before that, I was always just kind of making random decisions around Houston, moving in with friends to haunted houses that were infested with roaches, or I was at my parents' home. So I just never really felt like I'm home, I'm in my space, until I got to this particular space. And it's a big deal for me. It is a big deal. And I will say that, you know, the space had its issues when I first got here, but the way that this company works with me, the way that, I don't know, I feel safe here. It's a beautiful area. And I feel really fortunate to have finally found a place where I'm like, yeah, I'll stay. Sure. I've never even wanted to renew a lease. I am at my age that I'm at, and I've only lived at apartments for 1 year. I've never even lived somewhere for 2 years. So being able to say, oh, I would live here for another year, sure. That's a great thing. And so I'm thankful for that. Next, I am grateful for YouTube. So in my video that I made where I was talking about my experience specifically with Pretty Privilege and kind of like the outcome that came from that, I had some comments. Some people understood because they've been content creators or they know what it's like to get publicly dragged, or they could just see and have witnessed like some of the things I was talking about in that video that happened as a effect of that content coming out. But some people were just very surprised at the fact that I would have been hurt by that experience at all. And I kind of looked at it and I said, okay, well, they've never been through it. I think a lot of people were more so focused or wanted me to be more focused because people in general want people to feel happy instead of feeling sad about something. But they were more so focused on, you know, the fact that I might have made something or done something that impacted people in some way. They were more so focused on the fact that because I, you know, was able to do that, I'm able to have this job as a content creator, which I still think a lot of people feel is a very privileged position to be in, and I'm not gonna debate that at all. Especially when I think about the job that I was working a few years ago. I absolutely agree with that. And so since I focused kind of on the negative in that video, well, not the negative, but just like the harder parts of this position, specifically when you're known for making triggering content, I want to take a moment and focus on the positives of being here on the platform. Number one thing, it's been the best thing for my mental health. Somebody said in the comments of that video, they were like, well, it looks like you sacrificed your mental health then for engagement. And, you know, that's not necessarily true. It's almost like somebody putting out an album, you know, after a bad breakup. So they write an album and some people don't like it, and that's hard for them because that's their art. You know, it's like Beyonce said once, I'm an artist, so I'm sensitive about my and that's 100% how it is and what it is. Once you put something out, even though it's good and it's cathartic for you to release, the way people perceive it and accept it, if they don't like it, can be hurtful to you. But everything that I put out, everything that I've decided to say has, in a sense, been extremely helpful for me, especially when I do have that collaborative feedback from people who say, oh my God, I went through this, or thank you so much for explaining this way. I did not get, you know, just that positive feedback has been so helpful and so essential for my formulation as like a human being. And so formulation, my development as a human being. And so it's been great in that way for my mental health. Financially, so I'm not a wealthy content creator by any means. I consistently look over at, because right now, especially on TikTok, people are doing like they're reviewing their year, and they're talking about like, oh, if only January 2022 me had known that they would have endorsement deals and go to brand events and go blah 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 and make six figures, and there's a lot of that happening right now on that particular platform. And so that has not been my experience at all. But when I tell you I've never wanted for money since beginning this process, there has never been. If there's been a light month, it's because I didn't do anything. I didn't work. Now, yes, I have sometimes put out a lot of videos and expected them to do a lot better. Maybe I go into the month and I'm like, okay, this month I want to make this much money, but the videos just didn't get the views, so I wasn't able to make that money. Honestly, the money that I wanted to make was way over what I needed. And yeah, it would be nice if I hit those numbers, but oh well, make different content. The fact for me, it's the fact of having that source and that safety net where I know, hey, bank account's looking low. You need to upload. That's an incredible resource for me that I did not always have. I can remember times in my youth, like especially in my 20s, where like my lights would get cut off and I would have to go stand in line at like the charities of churches because I was in between jobs. I was living alone when I shouldn't have been living alone. But I wasn't allowed to live in the house because my mama was tired of her older children, her old adult children being in the house. I think about that versus now where it's like, oh, bank account's looking low. Let me just switch something. Let me just move some things around. It is nice to have found something where I can be financially comfortable. I'm not wealthy by any means, but it has been wonderful and so restorative to feel safe and to feel financially like I'm in good hands. And that is a door that would not have been open for me without making certain types of content. But I'm happy that it's open, and I think what I have done is managed like the rough parts of it with the knowledge that it's still a really great resource though. So even if you're not feeling 100, you still need to show up for this because it's kind of amazing. And it's also opened the door for other things. And I sincerely do believe, even though I acknowledge that like maybe my name is being spoken in some rooms not positively, I also believe that there might be a future for me that I'm just not aware of, that might be available because I decided to do this. So it's been a blessing overall, and I can't deny the schedule. I really, really can't. The fact that like it's a pretty great schedule. It honestly is. So yeah, I'm grateful for YouTube as a platform, even though I've got my gripes. I'm grateful to be here and to be making content the way that I've been making content. And to be financially rewarded for it. It's been awesome, and so I'm grateful for that. Okay, moving up this list here. Number 2, the second thing that I am grateful for, my family. So I don't talk about it here, but I talked about it over on Patreon. This was a hard year for my family, and I'm not going to go into details, but there was a time where everything was very stressful and everything was very strained, and there was a lot of pain and there was a lot of confusion, and I mean it looked like it was rough there for a minute, for literally 11 months. So I would say from like last October to this October, rough. And again, I didn't talk about it here. I talked about it a little bit over on Patreon, but it was something that was happening every single day. And it was very, very hard to witness, and it was very, very hard to experience. And through that, though, I have looked at my parents with all new eyes. I think I see all the time on social media people discussing their parents and discussing, the different ways that maybe they were let down, or the different ways that they've had a hard time with their parents. And I just am closing out this year feeling extremely blessed. In fact, that leads me into my number 1 thing I'm grateful for, and that is the support of my small community to move forward with personal goals that I have in my life. I make no light of it here and I don't keep it a secret that there are things that I still wanted to accomplish that I have picked up and put down because it doesn't look like I have the access to accomplish them. Specifically, I am speaking about motherhood, okay? I started talking about perhaps going it alone back in July, and then in my personal life there was another hit, and it just seemed like the walls were kind of closing in, and I would not have any support from my community that I really needed support from. And I began just thinking about what an isolating experience it would be and how much harder it would be without that support. And so I was like, I have no choice but to walk away from it. And then recently, something shifted, something changed. And the sort of restrictions that had been on a lot of people that are around me were lifted. And I was able to have a conversation with my mother. And I was talking about it and I said, I think next year is my year to just go ahead and try by myself. And my mom has always been very open-minded with that. She's not a person who's like, no, you need to get married first. My mom is somebody who motherhood was a really high calling in her life and marriage was another calling, but separate. And so she always recognizes and cheers on her friends, whether they be her gay friends, whether they be friends who were just, maybe even in their 40s and hadn't got married yet, excuse me. She always cheers on women who follow through with motherhood. And she would, because she's like a super mom, if you will. She definitely recognizes and acknowledges that mother, if it's on your heart to do, it's a powerful calling on your heart. And if you can follow through with it, you should. And so we sat down and had a conversation just about that shift that had occurred. And I was like, well, I think next year is my year to try. And she was like, and I'll be behind you 100%. In my video about Pretty Privilege, about that experience, someone wrote in the comment section, she's a 40-year-old woman with no husband and no children and no agenda for her life. And, I looked at that comment and I was like, okay, I can tell this person is obviously very young, but number one. Number two, I can tell they don't need to be subscribed to my channel. And I did ask them to unsubscribe and I hope they have. But number three, that concept of having no agenda, I don't think it's talked about enough, the emotional ennui of being in your late 30s, early 40s, where your personal life is concerned and where you were told and taught, okay, you can only go after certain things if certain things are in order. I see consistent content and voices coming from, online and elsewhere where people talk about how if you do things by yourself or if you're doing them by yourself, you're in some way shameful or you should carry shame with you. There's all of this really negative rhetoric out there about, women my age and how, you guys know, you know. And so not only that, but I think just in general, I still had this hope that my life would look a certain way. And I remember being 37 and thinking about doing things by myself and feeling guilty, like I was leaving someone behind. Like there was still someone that I was yet supposed to meet to go ahead and carry this thing out with. I remember being, I am 38, but like at the beginning of the year, I was like, okay, this is the year that I'm going to meet this person, so on and so forth. And having things just really still not be able to come together, that magical individual still not appearing and time passing by, valuable time that you cannot get back, waiting on someone else before you go. And so it was just a very real thing, feeling stuck and feeling like, what can I do? I don't know what I can do. If this doesn't come in and this doesn't come in. And in that same comment thread, and I've left it up on that video, there was another person who sailed in and was like, yeah, I know, I get so sick and tired of hearing about, and again, it's like, you don't have to hear about it, you can leave. But I just think it comes from people who don't understand what it is like, feeling like, okay, I still have these things I want to accomplish, but which way should I go? What should I do? One of my favorite YouTubers of all time is Evelyn on the internets, right? We love Evelyn. And she made a video and she was just called Depression. She was talking about this past year. And I don't know her personally. I don't know the things she was going through. But in that video, she talked about coming to a point where in your life where you're just like, what is next? And feeling like that confusion so heavily that you're just, sometimes you're depressed, sometimes you're angry. She talked about other things, but I was like, I relate to that. And I think if you haven't come to that point, you can't relate to sort of sounding like you're just walking around in a circle and coming back to the same things over and over again. So what was so powerful for me then here right at the end of the year was coming to a point where I was able to say, hey, I can go forward. And then hearing from my mother, who's like the captain of my small community, and I've got your back. Go ahead. And so that was very powerful for me. And that's probably the main thing I'm grateful for heading into the new year of my life with an agenda. I don't know why I am saying it like that. I just felt it was so funny that they wrote agenda. It just sounded so anachronistic. I felt like a character from Downton Abbey had written that comment. But anyway, so that is the number one thing I'm grateful for, having the opportunity in a new year to move forward with new plans in all aspects of my life, not just in that aspect, but that's a big one. And so being able to finally say, okay, it's time, let's go, is really powerful for me. And in the end, I'm grateful for this year, even though it did not unfold how I thought it would, whether it's with my career or with my personal life. I feel like the internal work and the internal growth that has happened has been very, very valuable, and I'm grateful for that. I wanted to share that with you all today on this day that we celebrate what we're grateful for and why. And I hope you all had or are going to have a wonderful Thanksgiving with your families. And if you saw this video, please never forget, I am grateful for you for tuning in and listening to me babble about whatever it might be. It is very random over here, but that's okay. And as always, thank you for watching.